Well, yet again, parts of the red line are shut down this week, and parts of the green and orange lines will be out of commission over the next few weeks. MBTA General Manager Philip Eng says the shutdowns are allowing for much-needed repairs that'll make sure the T works in the long run. But there's still a major source of frustration for riders who have some questions about what is going on. GBH News transportation reporter Bob Seay joins me now to answer some of those. Bob, we'll get to the shutdowns in just a moment, but right before you and I started having this conversation, you shared with me that there's some big news out of Boston where Mayor Michelle Wu has announced an extension of the free bus program operating in the city. How big a deal is this?
I think it's a pretty big deal because when she first started this 2 years ago, I think she was hoping that eventually there'd be such support at the success of this program that somehow the state or the MBTA might pick up the cost. Well, she waited to the very last minute and today announced that the city will pick up the cost, which is about $8 million for 2 years. And it will pay the MBTA, reimburse the MBTA for bus service on routes 23, 28, and 29.
Where do those routes go?
They go through the Mattapan, Dorchester, Roxbury part of the city where there are a lot of lower income people who really depend on the bus to get to work, among other things.
Okay, and we should mention this is being funded with federal funds, right?
Right.
I'm going to blank on
the ARPA funds.
ARPA. Let's stick with ARPA funds.
America Rescue Plan funds. Yeah, she announced today that that's going to pay for it. So this is a great step forward. Of course, Mayor Wu is really big on not having fares at all for the T, and that may be a bit unrealistic, but I think she's been very strategic in terms of targeting the routes that really have riders who need the help.
Well, it'll be interesting to see after this latest extension plays out if maybe someone else is convinced to fund it or if it goes away. There is a push by the T to expand not free fares, but to expand the existing reduced fare program for individuals and families. Why is this something the T is looking at?
They have been looking at this for almost 10 years. This has been, thought about, planned, hoped for. Advocates have really pushed for it. And we're finally at the point now where Governor Healey's support and the MBTA is behind this program, which will give riders generally a 50% discount if they qualify.
And that would be, tell me if I have these numbers right, if you're an individual making up to about $30,000,
right,
you'd get a half-price discount.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a family of four making up to about $60,
right,
same deal, right?
And the important part about this is it's not just the T, it's not just the subway. It's also the buses, it's also commuter rail, which is a huge change, because commuter rail, even though we all traditionally think of it serving wealthier suburban commuters, it actually is a tremendously important link for gateway cities where there are a lot of lower income working people, and they can have to spend $300 to $400 a month.
It's not cheap.
Transit. No, it's not
I used to take it to work before I realized I just couldn't make it work with work.
Right.
It's a lot of money.
That is, and then add parking onto that.
So this has only been floated right now. What will it take for the T's plans to expand reduced fares to become a reality?
Well, it's more than just floated.
Okay.
It's really to the point now where they're having public hearings as we speak. In March, at the March MBTA board meeting, they'll be voting on it, and I predict they will approve it. And it will begin to roll out in the spring and summer. So this is moving along pretty quickly.
There are a bunch of shutdowns, as I mentioned at the outset of this segment, a bunch of shutdowns currently going on. We went downtown and heard from one woman, Mary from Dorchester, who's hoping that you can shed some light on what's happening with the red line in particular. Let's take a look at Mary's question and concern.
My question would be, how are the improvements on the red line going? I've been able to ride on some of the new trains, which have been wonderful, but there still seems to be some delays that affect my commuting to work.
Okay, you got good news for Mary. Those red line shutdowns are underway right now, right?
Yes, and we had some last year in the fall, south of Park Street toward Braintree.
Now it's up like Alewife to
right now we're north of
Harvard
Park Street, and so what's happening is these, what I call the great reconstruction of the T is taking place in segments and pieces. So people will see some parts of some line shut down part of the time, and others that'll be opened up. But eventually, the aim is to remove all of the slow zones. The recent Green Line shutdown, which lasted actually a pretty long time, resulted in about 16 speed restrictions being lifted. The goal now with the latest Red Line shutdown is 53 speed restrictions to be lifted.
That's a lot of speed restrictions.
That's a lot. Right.
All right, so it's Red Line underway right now with then Orange Line shutdowns and Green Line shutdowns to come. Your phrase, the great reconstruction of the T, it is compelling, but it also makes me wonder at what point, because we've had so many shutdowns for so long, at what point might the great reconstruction of the T be wrapped up? The
end of this year, according
to
Phil Eng. Yes, he has pledged to eliminate all speed restrictions by the end of 2024.
Huh. I had missed that, and that's
we'll hold him to it and see if he comes through.
A lot of people will be very happy if that happens, as you know better than me. All right, I want to close by asking about a more downbeat topic, I think. The T is mounting a push to get people to help them keep track of assaults on bus drivers, and we've got a little snippet from Instagram that shows how this campaign is working and what this campaign is predicated on. Let's take a quick look.
I've been with the T for about 19 years. A few years back, I was on the 16th route and somebody spat on me. Being a bus operator, you try to do the best that you can. You try to de-escalate it at the most. But you have to make the best out of it, honestly. But it can definitely be challenging.
How big a problem is this? I assume it's pretty big since the T is mounting a new PR campaign. And by the way, I should mention what they want to do is they want to get people to use an app. Tell me, it's the MBTA See Something, Say Something app or See and Say app to fill in details if they witness something going on that shouldn't. But how big an issue is this?
Well, it's a national issue. So the Federal Transit Administration is actually requiring a lot of transit agencies to start documenting assaults, how they're dealing with them, because even though there may be relatively few physical assaults, there's a lot of verbal assaults that drivers have to put up with. And most of these happen when people are trying to pay their fares or not pay their fares. So the idea of having a fare-free bus, some of the routes, eliminates that conflict right off the bat. But it also is, you can imagine you're driving a bus, which is really challenging in the city, and you've got somebody hassling you, and you're trying to pay attention to what you're doing. It's extremely unsafe. So it's a really important campaign. Now, the number of assaults have been steadily dropping a bit, but it's still something that the T wants the public to get involved in. They want to engage the ridership to report whatever they see.
I think you told me that the assaults had peaked, was it 2021 right after?
I think it was fall of 2022. I was trying to read it, and it really was like a kind of a peak, and then it dropped down. I don't know why.
Well, I think you and I chatted a little bit on the phone earlier today. I think you had mentioned that this was right after COVID.
Yes.
When we sort of saw, I mean, I see it as someone who, for better or worse, has to drive into work. People have decided to just ignore traffic signals. Red lights are now optional. They're like the equivalent of a stop sign. So maybe, just throwing this out, maybe it was pointing out the extent to which people became desocialized during COVID.
Yeah, there's definitely an increase in rude behavior. Let's put it that way.
I spoke over you. I was going to say, I cannot imagine trying to navigate a bus through dense Boston area traffic.
Right.
Under the best of circumstances.
Right.
And if you were doing it, dealing with abuse or being fearful that you might be either just given a hard time verbally or assaulted physically by the people you were conveying, it'd be terrible.
And also the T is trying to hire more bus drivers.
Yeah.
So the more word spreads that it's dangerous or, that's a disincentive. So I think they're trying to, as our other transit agencies, mount an aggressive campaign to target people who may be abusive to drivers.
Well, I got to say, I hope it works out, and I hope those numbers continue to drop because that's just completely unnecessary. All right, Bob C., thank you for talking this through. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam.
And if you've got questions for Bob on anything transportation related, please send them our way at greaterboston@wgbh.org, or you can send them to Bob on X, aka Twitter. He's at BobWGBH, or in the comments below if you happen to be watching on YouTube.